I have a secret. You guys might not be ready to hear this, but you know that fucking Agatha Harkness show? Yeah, the one that we were all like, why are they making this? This is such a dumb idea. MCU is dead. They have no ideas. Turns out, that show is actually really good. And this is coming from someone who didn't even like WandaVision all that much. Yeah, like most people, I was not excited for this show, but I still tuned in because the trailers had glimpses of stuff that I seemed to like between the music and just the practical effects and just the vibes and the Audrey Plaza. This show is so much more than I expected it to be, and on rewatch might become one of my favorite MCU projects ever. So let's just get into why. I will say this review will kinda have spoilers, but only for the stuff that hasn't really been marketed. Like, if you look at Marvel Studios' YouTube page and you see any of their trailer thumbnails, you'll know some of the spoilers, but I won't talk about any of the big ones, since I want to just recommend this show to people who were skeptical of it, like me. The first episode was very fun, and just kind of felt like WandaVision continued. I know this episode was kind of people's least favorite, which I don't really get, because I loved everything about it. I thought just the writing of the crime detective show was fun. Catherine Hahn is doing an amazing job, Audrey Plaza is doing an amazing job, that fight at the end was really cool, and it just set up some good stuff. It was also funny, with a little bit of well done direction that really made it stand out in my head. Like, this show just looks amazing, and the cinematography is really good by all the practical effects that just make it stay in your mind, and it's directed in such an engaging way. Like, I never saw myself losing the attention at all. And to circle around about the stuff I talked about earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of WandaVision. Don't get me wrong, obviously it's good, but the first half is fantastic, and the second half is just an MCU show. But this really felt like Jack Schaefer's uncompromised vision, the same way that the Guardians films feel like James Gunn's uncompromised vision. It really felt like a passion project. The stuff that WandaVision did well, this show also did well, and in most cases improved on, from the genre format to the way mysteries are built up and revealed, and the pacing of the way the mysteries are revealed. And it also had none of the stuff that held WandaVision back. There's no lame government side plot. It's all the main characters and the storylines we follow were interesting to me, especially with Rio. I love her. She's one of my new favorite additions to the MCU. She's so fun, and you can tell Audrey Plaza's having a blast. I would have liked to see more of her backstory, but I'll get into that when I talk about some of the later episodes. Episode 2 is probably my least favorite. It's just there for exposition besides the really cool ending of it. And obviously Sharon is a GOAT! And now we get to one of the most controversial things about this show. Joe Locke as, this is your last chance if you somehow don't know already, I'm going to spoil who he is, Billy Kaplan. I am a big fan of Billy Kaplan in the comics, and from the trailers, if this teen was Billy Kaplan, I was going to lose it. But I actually didn't lose it, surprisingly. Joe Locke does a kinda annoying performance in the first half of the show, but then once we figure out that this is Billy purposely putting on a face, it doesn't really bother me as much. In the later half of the show, he gives some really good line deliveries and performances. There's still some stuff he can work on, but I think by the time we see him next, he will have taken all this criticism to heart. But obviously, even though he was well casted to represent the LGBTQ, and in general this show was not queer-baiting at all, the LGBTQ representation was really good. Obviously, there's the side of Billy Kaplan's Jewish side that Joe Locke obviously isn't. Granted, they still had these scenes in the show, and I would have rather have had these scenes, especially considering it was written by a Jewish creator, and the amount of Jewish representatives that helped create certain scenes, I really appreciated and thought was well done. And I do think, to an extent, Joe Locke was trying to be respectful to Jewish culture, but at the same time, if he really was, he probably wouldn't have taken the role. But to me, this Billy Kaplan is more inoffensive. There's some stuff I like, there's some stuff I don't like, but overall, I did not come out hating him as much as I thought I would. In the marketing, after his big reveal, it seemed like he was just going to be Wanda Jr., and to some ways he is, but I like that they made sure to point out he's not Billy Maximoff, he is Billy Kaplan, and I appreciate that, and I hope by the time we see him next, he's truly evolving into his own character. Like I mentioned earlier, all the side characters were really nice. Jennifer portrayal is cool, and I'm very excited to see where she shows up next. I think after all that's happened to her in this show, there's some really emotional and creative storylines they could take with her. Alice was one of my favorites. Originally, I didn't like how her storyline ended, but after the last scene with her in episode 8, I did kind of come around to it. Lilia was also a fantastic character that I didn't really like all that much until the episode dedicated to her that just blew me away. Patti LuPone gives a legendary performance here. This character could have been used so cheaply, just like, oh, just random ways to just set stuff up, but on the episode dedicated to her and you see how she lives, it didn't feel cheap at all, and it felt earned the way they set this stuff up. And the way her mental escape is filmed is like so creative, and it blew me away when I first watched it. Like, I couldn't believe I was watching a Marvel show. It's like that time slipping idea that they had in Loki season 2, except way more visually and thematically interesting. As I mentioned, Sharon's a goat, but I wouldn't mind to see her more. She could have had some really funny moments, but I'm also glad that she didn't overstay her welcome. The music elements were really nice. At first, when they first sung the ballad, I thought it sounded really bad and auto-tuned, but I came around to it, and ballad in the future episodes is just super well done, and the way it came back never felt repetitive because they used it in so many different ways. Such a great way to further the story. Elements of the trial were so cool. I love the practicality. I love the different tricks that they had to do. None of them felt bland, and I liked how each of them reflected a singular character while also being able to reflect all the characters, and you can just see the way these characters grow after each and each trial. None of them felt like filler. And I also like how at the beginning it was just kind of campy horror, the very fun campy horror, but eventually in the latter few episodes, it does transition to some genuine creeps that got me. Now we get to the big girl, Agatha Harkness herself. Her storyline was just amazing. Cannot give Catherine Hahn enough flowers. But Agatha in WandaVision was one of my least favorite parts of that show. Like, she was just thrown in there to have a CGI battle, and she was very two-dimensional, despite Catherine's pretty good performance. But here, they give her so many layers, and I found myself so empathetic towards her. Backstory they give her just makes everything she does in WandaVision just stand out to me more, and now I won't be able to look back at that show without tearing up a bit. You know, like a good spin-off is supposed to do. And her wife Rio should have been explored more, but is still peak, especially considering we're probably going to see her again. And the ending worked very well for me, and that twist was not something I saw coming. It was a really effective twist, and I like how the twist affected the characters. The ending in general was such a good setup for future projects and where we could see these characters again, while still feeling like a conclusion to its own thing at the same time. It didn't just exist to be set up for a future storyline. It was just the setup was naturally integrated there. So yeah, that's all I have to say about the show. Super fun. Please watch it if you haven't already. At least get to episode 3, because that's when you know if it'll be your thing or not. I love it. I hope we see more stuff like this in the MCU. And I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. Have a good rest of your day. My next video will finally be that Uncanny X-Men movie pitch, and I'll see you later.